In this journey, we're on exploring the stories of Jesus, which is only found in the Good News according to Luke. We're discovering the truth that even at the beginning of the movement to follow Jesus, before the church as an institution was even conceived, Jesus was cut up, processed, and canned. In the grocery store analogy, missing the truth that Luke was trying to get at, that he was an unadorned rabbi who was followed by many because there were no strings attached, like a fresh veggie compared to one that is canned. It is clear to me that one of the objectives of the authors of Luke was to clarify to the Gentiles that to follow Jesus was different because it was a commitment of faith, not obedience to a religion. It was a commitment of faith, not obedience to a religion. No strings attached. Now, for 2,000 years, this has been a factor which has caused division in the Christian family of faith. We had the early separation was between the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholic Church. The other is a separation then 1,000 years later between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant movement again. And then there are many divisions within the Protestant community. And Luke gives us some real insights into these divisions. Simply stated, often the divisions are over which strings certain groups insist on attaching to Jesus. Again, many divisions are over which strings certain groups insist on attaching to Jesus. The narrative of Luke is about what each of these separated groups should have in common, according to Luke: Jesus. No strings attached. Now, within that discussion of separation over these 2,000 years, the movement called Methodist is a case study in this phenomenon of separation and division. For 250 years, groups have separated from the historic insistence of the mainstream of the Methodist movement to attach no strings to Jesus. In the last couple of years, 25% of those who were formerly United Methodists have left the mainstream of the Methodist movement, the United Methodist Church, and it's my opinion that those who have left have, for the time of my career, 65 years long is my career, folks have consistently wanted to attach some strings to Jesus that the Gospel according to Luke insists were cut by Jesus himself. Those who left are uncomfortable with the no strings attached understanding of the historic membership vows of the United Methodist Church. The only question that is asked in the United Methodist Church: do you believe in Jesus? Period. No doctrine, no creed, no strings attached. Do you believe in Jesus? You see, This week, we're even dealing with the question that might be asked, do you believe in a certain understanding of God? No strings attached, according to the parable we're considering this week. The parable we're considering this week, which is only found in Luke, is the parable of the prodigal son. Um, you know, the two most famous parables of Jesus, Good Samaritan and, quote, the prodigal son, only found in Luke. Now, a couple weeks ago, we dealt with the Good Samaritan. This week, the parable of the prodigal son cuts the string of an understanding of God as a God of vengeance, retribution, and judgment. You see, I was first introduced to this understanding based on some sermons that the theologian of a couple generations ago, Helmut Thielicke, uh, wrote a book of his sermons on the parables. And when you come to this parable, it's not entitled the parable of the prodigal son. It's the parable of the waiting father. There's a lot of stories about prodigal sons. Everyone knows that story. Oftentimes it's autobiographical about oneself in this story of the prodigal son. But what's unusual about this parable is when you look at the story, that it's a story about the father, the waiting father, not primarily the story of the common prodigal son. You see, Jesus' faith journey as a young man was dominated by an understanding of God as a God of vengeance and judgment. In Psalm 94 are the words, "Thou God of vengeance, shine forth." The Apostle Paul, raised in the Hebrew Jewish tradition, hung on to this when, in the letter to Romans, he said that followers of Jesus were to be agents of love because the responsibility of judgment and vengeance was lifted off the backs of the human community. Why? Because the nature of God will take care of vengeance. Remember, Paul said, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." You see, that's the faith tradition in which Jesus was raised. And the Gospel according to Luke presents Jesus telling the story of the waiting father, making it clear to follow Jesus means that the string attached to Jesus, that one is required to believe in a God of vengeance and a God of judgment, is cut. Let me say that again. According to Luke, telling this story of the waiting father, that to follow Jesus requires one to believe that God is a God of vengeance and judgment, is cut. You don't have to believe that. You can believe in a God of love, waiting for the human community and each individual to turn to the way of love. You see, the waiting Father's characteristic is just to wait. Now do we see why Jesus' teaching was such a threat to the religious establishment of the day, who wanted to attach the God of judgment and vengeance to Jesus? And Jesus said, no. It's also my opinion that it was not only a threat 2,000 years ago, it's a threat to many persons today for this string to be cut. You see, belief in the waiting Father is a threat to those who relish and spiritually bathe in the understanding that those who disagree with them and those who behave in ways which seem to be somewhat immoral and deplorable, they're going to get it in the end. The waiting Father is a threat to people that believe that. Indeed, because they're going to get it in the end, is that God is a God of vengeance and judgment, and it will be delivered to them by God. And you see, these persons who believe that are spiritually satisfied with others experiencing divine vengeance rather than being spiritually filled with the gift of divine love. You see, don't forget the fact it's found only in Luke, who presents Jesus with no strings attached. You don't even have to believe in the string of God, of judgment and vengeance. Rather, you're invited to follow one who revealed God as a God of love, whose characteristic is to wait. Wow, what a string to be cut. A gift for you and a gift for me. There's a whole lot there for your thought and conversation. First of all, parables are not analogies, but rather a parable is a story with one point. What's your response to the understanding that the point of this story is the nature of the Father, not the Son? Secondly, what's your response to Luke's narrative of Jesus, whose life and teaching was a gift of love from the God of love? And finally, does your belief in God include the component of vengeance? Thank you for being a part of our journey together.